Hello and welcome to the Worn and Wound podcast. My name is Blake Bettner, and we are in studio today with Zach from New York. Zach Weiss, hello. How are you?
From New York, I like it. I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm from New York. I've earned that
He's from New York.
with my life.
Yeah, it's true. So yes, it's an important distinction that you've earned there. We are thrilled to be joined by some of our favorite people in the industry, longtime friends of ours, Lauren and Lorenzo of Laurier Watches. Lauren, Lorenzo, welcome to the Worn and Wound podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yes, it's a delight.
Happy to be here as always.
You guys were recently a part of the Wind Up Watch Fair in Chicago, and I believe you lost your voice had some issues. We were going to have you on. We published a lot of other things, and a consistent comment that I saw across all of them was, "Where's Laurier?" So a lot of people have been asking for you guys, waiting to hear from you. So we thought we would have you in office. You're relatively local to us, so we appreciate you guys being here today to talk about what you're doing. Thank you for being a part of the show, by the way, the Wind Up Fair. How did that go for you guys? Was it a good fair? Did you enjoy yourself? You got your voice back?
Yes, I do have my voice back now. We had plenty of very engaging conversations.
Okay.
Which is thus the lost voice.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, Wind Up is always a great time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really good to be there. Really good turnout.
Yeah.
Very impressed with Chicago. It did take us 2 days to get home. We became very familiar with the O'Hare Airport and the various hotels that are in the area.
Yeah. Just got a straight up cancellation sort of a thing?
Multiple delays and multiple cancellations.
Wow.
We got home Tuesday late in the day.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. ORD, get your shit together, would you? Well, I'm glad you made it back in one piece. And it was a fun show. First time in Chicago.
It's our first Chicago
right?
show.
So,
I haven't been on like every episode. I don't even know. I guess we've had some sort of debriefs of some sort. Well, we had a lot of episodes that kind of followed that we recorded there.
Yeah. We talked to.
It was a good show.
It was a good show. It was a lot of fun. Great venue. I'm really excited for New York this year. I think it's gonna be a good one. In
October 21st through 23rd. I hope I got that
October,
right.
Yeah. Are we allowed to say that it's in a different venue?
I mean, I think the venue's
already
already on the website.
Okay. Nelly out there.
You can see how we're not involved in all the details. We'll show up, hopefully.
No, anyways, thank you to everyone who showed up in Chicago at the fair. It was a great time. Lauren, Lorenzo, you're here for, well, there's a few things that we'll talk about. Watches, of course, if we have time. What before we get to that, though, what are you wearing on your wrists right now? What do you got on over there?
The Series 4 Neptune.
Okay.
Yeah, on our black olive NATO strap. Well, let me not say NATO. Sorry.
Okay.
Let's edit that. Let's edit that. I have the Series 4 Neptune on our black olive Bond style strap.
Okay. Excellent. It looks lovely.
And the Series 4 is the newest series?
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's one of only a few that exist right now.
Yes.
He's wearing very precious goods.
Brag.
It's out of circulation.
This is the one I'll be using for photography on the website.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll see it on the website / Instagram very soon because I am also the wrist model.
Okay.
And the photographer.
And the photographer.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he double times.
Yes.
You've got a lot going on over there.
How do you photo yourself?
A tripod and a
use a remote.
Yep.
Okay.
Good stuff.
Well, they come out beautifully, and you've got lovely wrists, so it all works out.
Much.
Out.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
And he just got new lighting equipment, so he's very excited to up our photography game even more.
Look out.
Yes.
It's going to be an exciting week in the studio.
Yes, this studio is going to be lighting envy, though. This is very nice, guys.
All right, so
since Patrick joined the team, we've definitely upgraded our a lot of our lighting, and Cassie as well. We've bought a lot of lighting. It's actually kind of exceptional.
Yeah. It makes a big difference,
we had some real crap.
Yeah.
Now we got some good stuff.
I don't know if it's better or worse. You can see us better, but
yeah,
it is what it is. Deal with it. So go follow at Laurier Watches on Instagram.
Yes.
If you want to keep an eye out for your lovely wrists and the new lighting equipment and the watch, if you're into that kind of stuff as well.
Oh yeah, the watches are there
and
too.
The watch is there too. I see that you are wearing the same watch.
We're twins
on different straps.
Good taste.
Why is that? What is this watch?
Oh, it's the all-steel Hydra LE we did with y'all earlier this year.
That's right.
It is,
I thought that looked familiar. Okay.
Yeah. When did we launch these? I don't even remember exactly when that happened at this point, but
I feel like it was.
It was in the
Past 2
summer.
years have been a blur.
It was
but-
either
It was
March, April, or May.
It was either March, April, or May.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that feels
Wow,
right.
was it that long?
I know,
feel like
I know.
It was just a
It's-
few weeks ago, right?
Yeah, I would have
mean-
thought the middle of the summer, but no, it was definitely before the summer.
It feels like a year ago
Yeah.
to me.
Right.
But now that I think back on it, it's like, well, that was not long ago at all.
No.
Yeah. In my mind, we've been kind of in a holding pattern for a while. Our website has been out of stock for almost a year in terms of most of our models. Okay, more like 6 months. Feels like a year.
Basically, since the Warren Mound LE.
Well, that wasn't on our website though,
Oh, yeah,
so
that's
that's
true,
why
that's
it
true.
feels.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right.
That's why
Yeah.
it feels longer ago. So we have had our foot on the gas this whole time. It just has not been visible, and now things are coming to light. Now we're rolling out our updated collection. We are updating every watch in our catalog. And releasing several new models as well, with the Zephyr on the table here, our first new model to be released.
Fantastic.
And this is all coming in the back half of this year.
Yes, it's going to be
Yes.
jam-packed.
Yes.
Wow.
So
Look out.
the reason why that is because supply chain, which we're all very familiar with nowadays. It's just there are just so many delays. Okay, so here's a challenge, right? Like every single component is made at a different place. So the case is in one place, the hands, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So if any of those pieces are missing, you could have all of them except, let's say, the seconds hand, and everything is stopped. We can't do anything.
Yeah.
But we can't blame the supply chain on everything. Part of it is us.
You can
Just blame the supply chain. Blame the supply chain.
I mean,
you can consider yourself part of the supply chain.
Yes. It took us so long. We were making what seemed to be small tweaks to these models, but it took a very long time to get that just right. It took a surprising amount of time to be able to engineer the lugs, to bring the lug hole in just a little bit.
Yeah.
Towards the
Would you
center of the case.
towards the end of the lug?
Yeah, towards the center of the case.
Towards the center of the
Oh,
case,
okay,
just
okay.
to minimize the gap when you put it on a two-piece strap.
Sure.
You know, okay, let's bring it in a little bit. Like 3
Wow.
months of back and
man.
forth technical drawings.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then they have to see, okay, do we have to redo the end link? Right.
Yeah.
And then do we have to redo the first link on the bracelet? Yeah.
It's a domino effect.
cascades
Right,
and all this.
right.
A lot of drawings, a lot of machining, a lot of
Right.
prototyping, and the tooling that goes into it takes a while. And then there's resistance to change, because
Oh yeah, of course.
factories don't just want to change willy-nilly.
Yeah.
You know, they
Even though
want
you're
to,
paying them to do it,
right?
which is
But
kind of ironic.
it is a pain because they lose money on this end, and so they want to
They'd rather
be
just
sure.
produce in quantity.
Right.
not
They don't
tweak and-
start making money until you start
Yeah,
producing quantity, and so they want to be sure. Do you really need this change? We have to do
So they
completely
act
new
as sort of as
tooling.
like a therapist a little bit.
Do
They're
you
like,
really want to bring the
Right.
lug hole in?
Yeah.
You know,
And this is
it's
all just for people who like to put different straps on there,
Yeah.
so it looks a little bit cleaner.
and we don't
Do
even
you
sell
find-
two-piece straps.
So
you
it's
know?
not even for you guys. It's for us.
No, it works.
Yeah.
though.
We're
It
part
works.
of the
Yeah,
problem.
no, it's worth it. It's worth it.
It is.
Yeah.
Do you find that when a factory pushes back, or like, how much do you give? Is there no give? Is there less as you move on? Was there perhaps earlier years? Because I could see, like, I definitely just think about my own experience in similar sort of things with various products. Just like initially a little bit being like, oh, they know best, right? They know, with like, something or working on a strap, and then I'm like, no, they just didn't want to do it. And then I, like a year later, I'm like, we're doing it. Oh, you should do it. Like,
Yeah.
and they're like, oh, fine, all right. Like,
That-
I know
Yeah.
exactly. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
So
you think people are experts, right? But then
I will say that now no give And it helps that there's two of us because
okay.
I'm like you, where I'm like, I'm the good cop,
Good cop, nice, good
quote
bad cop.
unquote. And
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, maybe cool. And then Lauren comes in. She's like, no, we have to have it this certain way.
I'm the
Yeah,
hard
it's-
ass.
Yeah.
No, it's good to have the personality split like that. Like it's more effective.
But yeah, and we learned when they say we can't do it or it can't be done to push back and say, are you sure?
Yeah.
Because we were taking that at face value for a while. And suddenly things that we told weren't possible became possible. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
Oh, we can make the bracelet a little thinner?
Okay.
Okay, well, let's do this.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like these, some things that we've been wanting to work on for a while are actually happening now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, it's great to hear, and it's nice to hear you
Refinements.
thinking about just these small details and every little
Yeah.
thing that elevates your watch, and that might not be immediately apparent to just somebody that's new to the brand coming along and seeing you guys for the first time, right? But you're kind of like building on a foundation, and every little bit tells a story.
I appreciate you saying that because during all these delays, it was like, these better be worth it. People better appreciate it because we could have been selling Series 3 Neptunes. We could have been, this whole time we've been out of stock. We didn't want to, once we realized we were going to update our models, we didn't want to continue selling what was being phased out. I think if we had a board of directors, they'd be screaming at us. But just the two of us, we didn't feel comfortable selling things that
You would be out of date fairly quickly.
So we didn't order more once they ran out. And we're like, okay.
Let's just focus entirely on what we have in front of us and get that done.
Yeah. So we haven't
It's
sold many
definitely-
watches this year, but
It's a cool approach though, because like I feel like a lot of brands, and no disrespect to brands that do this, but like they'll come out with a model, sell whatever it is, 500 units, maybe a few colors, maybe it's a year or two, and then they just move on to the next model, and then maybe at some point they'll return to it like 4 or 5 years down the line. They'll be like, oh, we're bringing it back for a year or something, and like maybe they'll make a couple of changes there, but the way you're doing it, like you're making those iterative, like annually nearly. So like the product is evolving at a faster pace, and you're not like ditching them. You're making the product, which was always good to begin with. Granted, like just more and more refined. And I imagine that's like a learning process too. It's like you now know more and more about what you want in a watch. And then when you have a new watch like the Zephyr here, which is a total departure, like how much of that is based on the education you've gotten from iterating on these several times,
That is a great question.
That is like not even a question. I don't even know.
Yeah.
It was
I mean,
a
that's a good
statement,
point,
it was
though.
a rant.
Yeah.
I appreciate you
yeah.
saying that because there is a component of eating humble pie when we begin the revision because each time we, create a watch, we're like, this is it. This is what we want.
This is the best thing ever.
So then to live with
We're
it and
genius.
be like, actually,
Yeah.
we could probably make an improvement here or there. To admit that to ourselves, for me at least, is something that's like,
Okay.
But
I hear what you mean. Yeah.
ultimately it's for the best.
Yeah.
And we are growing, we are refining our tastes, we're seeing what is possible for us, and so
And
I'm trying to embrace that, and people have been very receptive to it as well.
Yeah.
Because my fear was people are going to get frustrated with us. They buy a watch thinking, okay, this is it, and then there's a new one. And I didn't want I want our watches to be a forever piece.
Yeah.
I want it to be, we want it to be a companion. We want it to be something they attach emotions and memories to, and it's a talisman.
Well, it's like at no
in their
point you're
life.
making like, I mean, I see what you're saying, because you iterate, you refine, and it's like, in theory, that might suggest a previous version isn't as good as the new version, but it's more like you've discovered new things, you're changing it. And I think about a brand like Rolex. I mean, they've been doing that for how many decades, and it's not like,
It's small little,
You know,
I always
but
tell
that's-
people this,
is it getting to there is no perfect. There's never an end. I think it's the other side of it. So it's not like you'll ever get to this place where you're like, we did it. We finally.
It's the same with the 911, but then you look back and people cherish some of those early
those,
generations
like,
for the
exactly.
subtle
Exactly.
Yeah.
You'll think is great.
Right,
You know,
right,
like,
yeah. Which is why I don't. Every time we talk about a new series, I don't like using the word upgrade. Because
or
I don't see it, or improvement, because I don't see it that way.
Even
10%
refinement
better
might
in this
suggest
way.
it's just different.
Yeah.
It's an update.
It's an update.
It's an
That's
update.
the word we
Yeah.
use.
And each version has its own charm.
Yeah.
So,
And its own
that's
bugs. Like a
But that's okay.
that we'll
That's okay.
discover down the road and be like, okay, maybe we should address this. But at the time of making it, it's like, this is the essence of the watch we wanted. Finally, is here. This is it. But like you were saying, Blake, it has been nice to see enthusiasts gravitate towards, oh no, I want the series 1. I want the series 2. I love that bubble dome. It's nice to see. Okay, so they're. I really don't want those. Our previous generations to get swept away, and so it is nice to see that there is still appreciation for that.
Yeah,
But it's tough for you guys who are always thinking about what's next. How can we? And especially you are living with these watches now. You're maybe wearing them for, now months and years, and you're okay. There's this little detail that I notice when I do this or that you wouldn't really think of in like a early design phase that you notice now, or you think about now in ways that you wouldn't maybe a few years ago, and then take that into when you kind of go into a different direction in new model lines. So I think it's really interesting, the evolution that we're seeing here, and how it's kind of subtle, but it kind of like builds up over time, which makes it interesting.
Yeah, a lot of it is owner feedback as well. It's one thing when I'm wearing it, but it's a whole other thing when 10,000 people have it.
for sure.
And send you an email.
And they're doing weird things that you never would have thought about.
Right.
Breaking wings.
So the watch that you guys have on, this was the limited edition done that you guys designed
Hydra
together.
2.
So
Collaboration.
yeah, was this? Tell me about this process. Was this? Did he have ideas that you guys were like, that's never going to fly with our manufacturers, or like what was the process of you guys working together to come up with this?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, now that you mention it, we wanted to do some crazy things with the bezel.
Yeah, there was some kind of crazy submission.
There were some conceptual. How do we think about
great.
time?
I love them.
Yeah.
There were some very
fun.
Yeah. There were some very conceptual things where it was like, oh, let's see if we can, reconceptualize the timing bezel.
Yeah.
With colors.
Yeah, the passing of time through various
Like
shades of colors.
synesthesia on a bezel, sort of.
Yeah, and it was awesome. I loved it.
They were neat.
But the bezel factory, I was like, we can't do more than 2 colors. Sorry.
Yeah.
I just recently had another thing I was working on there, and they're just like, yeah, the factory came back, and they're like, that's alignment hell. Like, we're not doing that on the watch that costs this much.
It's probably not the first or the last time you've heard that about some of your concepts.
Well, it's great because I don't have to talk to the factory and get the no or whatever. I'll just, throw whatever.
Yeah.
See what happens. See what hits. See what lands.
Yeah.
But I do like that we're able to do this version because I think it suits the Hydra particularly well, and it's a pleasure to wear.
Yeah. I'm a fan, obviously, of like a monochromatic watches and watches that almost look like they're carved from a single piece of material. It's one that's actually always been on my mind, and recently on my mind too, because of the passing of Issey Miyake. But he has this 2 watch, which is like discs of metal moving together, and it's just like it's something that's always on my mind. So that was just like another concept that was sort of in the wings, and kind of what was achieved here, and the finishing I think was, on your parts, like what you brought out really made it work.
Yeah.
The brushing on the dial feels just the right mix of refined and rough, so that it has that sort of raw story that we sort of told through the photos and everything else. So shout out to @ShiftPattern on Instagram, who did the photos for this out in Utah with a Porsche. Really exceptional work there. Yeah. Which was cool. That was tricky. That was a whole thing. I was just like, hey man, let's like get an experimental. I did the same sort of thing. I threw like a crazy concept out there and saw what was possible. And Mike's an awesome guy to work with, and he was like, yeah, let's go. I almost wanted to get like a rocket car on the salt flats. I didn't think that'd be possible. But it turns out the salt flats are mud that time of year. And like, obviously there's limited availability of all sorts of things. And then there's cars here and there that he knew about, but like some were suddenly in pieces because they were in the shop, or one had been repainted bright red. And it was like, no, it's not going to work. But found the right one in a dirt track at night, and it was pretty rad.
Yeah, they
so
turned
cool.
out amazing.
I see that you have a framed picture in your office.
Yeah,
we have a framed picture in our office as well.
Awesome.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful photo set. And not a teaser, but like people have only seen a small portion of those photos. We took like tons of
It was
photos.
hard to choose which to feature.
Some were shot on film, which I learned after. Like was shooting with a Leica just for fun.
Very
It was
cool.
like crazy shoot.
Yeah, they're great shots. It would be fun to put those somewhere.
But don't lose that spirit of just throwing it out there and seeing if it works or not. Because, I mean...
I like to see the reaction. It's part of the fun.
That's kind of what we did when we started our brand. We had no idea what it would take or what roadblocks would be in the way. And we just did it, and it worked out for us because we were naive to a certain amount of what actually had to go into it and what the risks were. Because I was just telling Lorenzo the other day, like, if I knew everything that like went into this, I don't know if I'd have the guts to do this. You know,
for sure.
They
say the more you know, honestly, the more fear you have is really the
yeah.
And like it definitely can be restrictive to have all the knowledge, and I feel like you can sort of see it in different brands, larger and smaller. Some seem so conservative, like they don't want to try anything, and then brands in like the smaller space seem much more flexible, but to an extent. I mean, some still seem a little restricted, and then you have a brand like Ming, not to refer to another, but they just had a launch day. I feel like he's probably just like that guy who's just like figure it out and totally like make something crazy, but with like with like an open, but he'll charge whatever. Like he could do a $30,000 watch. So it's sort of like a broader license, but like that's the attitude that makes interesting stuff sometimes.
Yeah. I think what Lauren is touching on a little bit is when we got into this, I think we still get in trouble for this because the reasons for why we make watches don't necessarily align with the rest of the industry. So I was thinking about this the other day, actually this was sparked by a few conversations at Windup. So I realized that for the most part, brands make watches to be A, a collectible, B, an investment, C, a trophy, D, a jewelry, or E, all of the above, sort of at the same time. And that's not really why we make watches.
And that's not why we started, or why we were
not,
into it in the first place.
Right, yeah.
So why did you?
Well,
the follow-up.
Yes. Well, before I get into that, I was going to say we haven't really done a good job of communicating why, right? So here's my sort of first attempt at this, and feel free to push back in any way you want. But the reason why we got into making watches was because we wanted to make a companion on your wrist, sort of like your avatar, right? That's your talisman. Like this little machine thing like has a piece of your soul in it. It has like your memories, it tells your story, right? I don't think there's any other object that can do that better than a watch.
At least for men, as something that you wear every day.
Yeah.
Right.
They are unique. I mean, in that way, there's few other products that's like literally sustainable in a sense that they're like self-contained and functioning and little service, and they, that you own. I mean, jewelry is inert, so it kind of can also be, so long as it's well taken care of. But the motion aspect of it sort of adds that soul
Yeah.
aspect that is a little
And the
bit.
mechanical,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why we
the romance of that.
right.
Yeah.
So that's why we gravitate towards mechanical movements, right? Because in a weird way, they're more human than a battery operated movement, which is
they're
like very
imperfect,
regular.
yeah.
You know,
There's something
like
really
almost
jarring
too
about
perfect,
picking up a quartz watch that is dead because the battery is dead. And like I have various quartz watches I really enjoy, and of various price points. Like, I recently picked up like a Zin that's quartz, and it's like it's a not inexpensive watch, but like someday I'll pick it up and it'll be dead, and I'll have to deal with getting it getting the battery changed on that, particularly because it's got like oil in it and all this. I'll just send it to Germany. It's gonna be gone for several months, and like I mean whatever. Now I'm just on a weird tangent, but like I like that. That is weird to like resurrect it. No, it's it's certainly part of it.
I think maybe this comes from our own personal like minimalism as people and as consumers, and we're not like into like the hyper consumerism. And like we don't want a different watch every year. We want something that's gonna last and gonna stay with us.
Yeah.
So envious,
but it's like it's the romance of it, and I mean, part of that is the storytelling. Like, look at the mid 20th century, and you see like the democratization. You know, as much as it could be, they're still expensive, but timepieces, mechanical watches become something that you associate with people from that era, that get passed down, that become really sentimental. And there's something warm about that in a very kind of cold, hyper consumerism kind of environment. I think so for us, when we wanted a watch, this specifically started with Lorenzo looking for a new watch for himself. But
my new one watch.
Right. He was looking for one watch.
Right. Yeah.
And he designed the Neptune. And it was designed to meet our desires, I guess, as people. And we released it. And then we released it out into the world. And then we got all this pushback from people who were approaching it from, wait, why isn't this as, they were looking at it from a perspective of an investment, a piece of jewelry, a collectible, and they were confused by our choices.
Right.
And as we've grown, people have become much more aware and accepting and understanding of why we do what we do in our mission. But every so often, someone will come across our brand and be like, wait, why aren't you using sapphire, you idiots? Like...
Well, they're all looking for their one watch as well, and you're not meeting their definition, perhaps, of when you hear like a watch nerd, like a hardcore watch, rattle off everything they want in a watch, and you're just like, all right, that's kind of impossible, or keep searching. But I guess in your end, they're like, you maybe get some percentage of the way there, and they want to like nudge you the rest, but that's going to rub up to your dreams and desires and concepts. So
I like the acrylic crystal. Like, once you see it, you can't unsee the difference. And there's something about a personal attachment of polishing it every so often. Like, you build a bond when you have to care for something. Like the links in our bracelet, you can change them. You can size a bracelet easily.
Single-sided screw. Thank you, guys.
We want to make it something that you can easily, like, take care of yourself, and cut out the middleman as much as possible.
I'm definitely, when it comes to like my perfect watch, like single-sided screw is one of those things, and like I feel like I've probably, to a point that's probably annoying to brands, just been like, this bracelet was great, but it uses this other method that is totally accepted universally, but I don't like, therefore, it's like, make it easier for me, thanks. Anyway, even if I only have to do it once, right? It's just like, I don't want to potentially damage it or anything. Anyway, whatever. I can go to,
so when it comes to owner feedback, when we get feedback that addresses the comfort of it or the versatility, things like that, or the legibility, we take that into account, because that is something that it determines whether it's going to be a daily wear or not,
Mm-hmm.
right? We want it to be as comfortable, as legible, as versatile, beautiful as it can be, to where it can easily be your daily wear. But when it comes to feedback of, oh, you need more, that's more jewelry oriented. Like I want a ceramic bezel insert, or I want a sapphire crystal, or things that maybe signal to me that it's not about the use or the wear. It's about the material, like
It's about what like websites they're reading, and maybe it's
Yeah,
ours, maybe
I'm
it's someone
like, okay,
else's,
that
and like
is
the
not-
things they say. Cause
I'm like, I'm not. That's not something that we will really
one of
spend
the
time on.
more poignant moments during the Wind Up Watch Fair for me was I was talking to one of the owners of our watches, and I asked him, so what do you want to see from us next? Like, throw out anything. And he says, if I'm going to be honest, I'd like you guys to put on a sapphire crystal on your watches. And he says, because I'm rough on my watches, right? And which, I totally understand that. And so I tell him, yeah, I totally understand. But, just wear it anyway, right? Like, I'm rough on my watches too, right? And, if it gets scratched and, at some point I get annoyed with the scratch, I just poly watch it out, and it takes 20 seconds, right? It's no problem. And, I don't know if you guys have ever had this experience of shining shoes and how incredibly rewarding it is.
I love it.
Right?
I love it.
Yeah. So it's sort of like that bond I get with the watch.
And that's why I don't buy the excuse I'm rough on my watch, because this is something.
It's different levels of rough. I've seen some.
This is
some
something
damage.
that can be polished out, whereas you can't polish out a mineral glass or a sapphire. If it's
Right,
there,
yeah,
it's
right.
there. And then if you have hard impact on your crystal, that acrylic crystal will absorb it and it will crack. It will not shatter.
Yeah.
Like, it will take the damage better, and you can easily replace an acrylic crystal and get on with your life. But when you shatter a sapphire crystal,
Oh yeah.
Then you
that's
might
going to
replace
cause
the
a lot
dial
of
and,
damage.
surface movement.
So
Right.
when I hear I'm rough on my watches, I'm like, well, thankfully we have an acrylic crystal that you
Right.
can beat up, you can polish, you can
and
go.
G-Shocks are all plastic, right? So, yeah.
Well, at the end of the day, this is your perspective and
yeah.
your watch, right?
Yeah.
This is
It's what
Yeah.
you want. I mean, it's all part of your
This is-
design, and you have
you-
reasoning
but-
too.
Yeah, but to finish the story, my the owner had a change of heart, and he said, "You know what? You're right. I plan to pass this watch on to my kids, and when I do, I don't want them to think, oh, you never wore this."
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and I think that's a great illustration of this point, and I think brands can fall into a certain like danger zone of becoming an amalgam of whatever they think will make all of their customers happy, which is not possible. Like, you're always going to be, and I think that's okay, and you have to like confront that and say,
Yeah.
well, I'm going to make what we want, and then you stick to your point of view, and then that becomes what other people buy into
I mean-
because you have that point of view.
Sometimes, I don't know if I should share this, but Lorenzo will have moments of weakness, and he's like, fine, let's just do sapphire.
And make a ton of money, and then we can retire. And then,
Ceramics,
yep.
Retire on
check
sapphire
off all the
crystals. I love it. Yeah.
But
It's
I
all-
was like, are you kidding me? Like, that's not, we got into this because we couldn't find a watch that checked our boxes, and an acrylic crystal was a big part of that. And it's beautiful, and it's hard to find.
It is beautiful.
And so
I didn't even,
also
you know,
like
what's
money,
funny?
though.
It's interesting. It's interesting. This has been such like a topic because, like, I'm aware that they're acrylic crystals, but I never thought of it as like such an important facet of your brand that like they're acrylic.
You know what?
And
I'm glad.
it's
I
interesting.
appreciate you
No, but it's-
brushing that off, because it's not that important. You know, like,
No, but I mean, but it
In the
also
grand
is
scheme of
perhaps.
things.
I don't know. It sounds like it is sort of
It's
important.
like a stone
it's a
in that
style.
foundation amongst
you know?
many others, right? That like make make the personality of these watches.
I think people sometimes think, and this is where things go awry, that you chose plastic because it's less costly or something. Acrylic is not less costly.
It's not.
Just because it's an aesthetic choice that you guys opted for.
And there's a lot of really appealing things about acrylic. Also, people seem to forget because, Omega calls it Hesalite. It's acrylic. That is a brand name. Yeah. That's all it is. Plexiglass, it's acrylic. All that stuff is just acrylic. Yeah. They use it for a reason, too. On a very expensive watch, and it's just as sensitive there. Anecdotally, I gave my girlfriend a watch that used an acrylic crystal. It wasn't a Laurier, but it was.
Sorry.
She's cracked the crystal twice now on it. But, yeah, she worked in a science lab. And it turns out that it's a really rough environment. So I gave her a G-Shock, which she hasn't broken. But now she no longer works in the lab. So now I think the acrylic is safe again. But I was amazed by it. The first time she brought it back, I was cracked. I was like, what the hell did you do?
It might be the solvents in the...
It could be. I also wonder if it's, it could be the tension on that specific model or something.
Yeah, it's
sometimes,
but
it depends.
Either way, I was so...
I'll tell you.
Yeah, I was impressed because I'm like, I do all sorts of stupid crap with my watches. I've never cracked an acrylic crystal. Good for you. Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's silly to set rules around watches that I'll buy. For me, I more look for the stories, the people and the point of view of a brand or why. That's much more interesting to me.
Yeah.
We've got watches with acrylic crystals and with batteries, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. There's something interesting happening here, and that's what appeals to me more than I've got my set of rules.
Yeah.
And there's
I think you live a much richer life.
You have to
when you go beyond the checklist. Yeah. I mean, I think the checklist is a result of how watches have moved online, and we're online.
Yeah.
And so how do you judge a watch that you can't handle? And so people develop these checklists as a shorthand.
And it's this weird,
and so I don't blame them for that.
Yeah.
But it should be guidelines, not rules.
100%.
Yeah.
There's this weird value thing too. I remember when 2011, we were first doing Worn and Wound. One of the things that other websites would rail on is this crown isn't signed. Just it was a thing. It was a thing for a while. If the crown was signed or not.
Because one blog probably mentioned it, and then one got
and it was just this is a sign that they're just picking parts out of the bin and use it, and it's just oh my god. Yeah. And now I think about it, and it's the same thing with virtually every single component. Every single component, it can be signed, it can be unsigned, doesn't matter. It can be acrylic, it can be mineral, it can be sapphire. If it works for the watch and the concept of the people behind it, that's what makes sense. I don't know. It's virtually every single component. Don't think you're getting ripped off because somebody's using acrylic or somebody's using aluminum bezels versus ceramic. People crap on the colors you can get out of aluminum are infinitely they're infinitely more infinite than what you can get out of ceramic. But you know what I mean?
There's textured things with aluminum. There's all kinds of gives and takes.
My pet peeve with that is the applied versus the painted indices.
Oh, that's a new one.
Oh, really? Okay, you've never heard that? Okay. Yeah, some people just dismiss everything that doesn't have applied indices. No. But that's
on the dial itself.
On the dial.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I forgot I was talking about this with that. I feel like there's a return to pad print. Oh yeah, it was because it had to do with the Tudor and the Ranger, and people are like, "Oh, it's so cheap because it's pad printed." It's pad printed. Yep. That's great. When was the last pad printed watch?
Yeah, you're not kidding, right? So I'm to your point about jewelry, whatever, all these I'm in the camp of watches are what you make of them, and you can buy a watch that other people might think of as this or that or investment, but still use it the way it was intended to be used. And, I think that's kind of the spirit that these kind of call upon to me.
Thank you. Yeah.
I mean, we're not trying to criticize people for any reason why the reason why, but I'm just trying to explain our approach as a brand and what we're trying to do, because
as people really
and as a brand, because when people are like, can you please do this or do that, I'm like, well, there are a lot of brands out there that meet your requirements. Actually,
we're spoiled for choice.
Truly.
But what we're trying to do here might not make you happy, but this is who we are as a brand. This is our philosophy, and we have to stay true to that.
And better to your point about wearing watches as they were intended to be. The other day we had dinner with our cousin who's a diver, and she was wearing a Laurier, and her bracelet was all scratched up, and I was like, oh my god, that looks amazing.
Yeah.
And it's like, what am I doing with my life with my like bracelet
we're so soft.
that barely has any scratches?
And we complain
Totally.
about like, oh my gosh, my watch has a scratch on it. What am
I
I
will
going to do?
say,
I will only buy a hardened steel watch.
I will say the two demographics, just in our limited experience in terms of dealing with warranties, two demographics that really wear their watches the hardest, and that's women and veterans.
Interesting.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
In terms of-
I don't know why, but
That's what we see. We're like, oh dang, look
Oh,
at
yeah, no.
this. We're gonna,
My
polish
girlfriend
this
is
up a little
way
bit.
more likely to screw up her watch than I am.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't inspected my wife's watches all that closely yet, and so maybe.
I bet they look great. I bet they look fantastic.
Yeah.
Can I ask you about one update that
Sure.
did surprise me, and I'm and not like shocked, but like more like I'm just curious.
Yeah, let's get back on topic to like,
Yeah.
you know,
These watch.
what's
So you've
what's on
changed the
table.
bracelet a bit,
Yes.
and you've rounded the links somewhat.
Yes.
Correct.
Just a little bit.
I'm just curious
a little
about this
bit.
decision. I'm just
We
curious about this
try to
decision.
keep them as flat as possible.
Mhm.
But owner feedback.
What was the effect you were going for versus the old or like?
This has to do with comfort.
Mm-hmm.
And just softening the edges a bit. We made the
Less
bracelet
hair pulling.
thinner.
I don't know. I don't have that
Yes.
issue.
It's
Okay.
not real. It doesn't. Yeah, it's just a little gentler. Our previous bracelet was comfortable already,
Mm-hmm.
but this is more on the outside of the bracelet, so just softening it up a little bit. Hard edges. Yeah, just making it comfortable on the inside and out.
We also made it thinner. Also as
By a millimeter.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's actually a lot.
3 instead
Yeah.
of 4.
Mhm. Yeah.
Wow, it was 4 millimeters thick.
Yeah. I
That's
mean, that's
interesting.
also
I
sort
I mean,
of the
I'll
result
give you the
of
watch I'm
owner
wearing because it has
feedback.
the old bracelet on it, and you can
Yeah.
see the
Mhm.
difference. Obviously, the listeners will not.
Oh yeah,
Be
once
able
you
to, but-
now that you say it, yeah,
Uh-huh.
that is way thicker.
Yeah.
I mean, a millimeter thicker, which is
Right.
in this instance 25% thicker. So.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's significant.
Yeah.
And I feel like even making a bracelet thinner is probably like controversial, right? Because people want a chunky,
Yeah.
over the top piece of armor.
It took us a
yeah,
while.
I think that's why we didn't make it that thin in the first place.
Mhm.
It was because we didn't want people to have that feeling of, oh, this is too jangly. But I think
or this
Doesn't feel
isn't
genuine
substantial,
anymore.
but
uh-huh.
and I think we found because we found the thickness and the feel to where I think it still feels solid, but
100%. I didn't. I mean,
it does. It does fit the wrist very nicely, and our old
if you hadn't
bracelet
told me
is
this was thinner, I would have
comfortable,
thought about it.
and like you can go all day and you'll forget you're wearing a watch. But I think that it's lighter, but it's not flimsy.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it's cool. I appreciate it. Now that I see the thickness difference in particular, I'm really like, wow, really is a change. But like, I think it's one of the things that probably made your brand stand out from the very first watch was that like you got the bracelet right at the beginning. 'Cause
Yeah, those are important
there
details.
are brands that have been around for 100 years that can't make a
Still
bracelet.
have
Still.
it, yeah,
And
yeah.
that's why we
Yeah.
were a little hesitant about how this change would be received. But
No,
Well,
if it's
on risk
people seem to
reaction
really
right
want
here,
it.
right now.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a good
It
bracelet.
works.
I like it.
Alright,
I like
alright.
it. Yeah.
It's
take it.
it's something that like these are the kind of details that if it makes you want, like you said, you forget you're wearing it. If you wear it all day and you don't really notice it, it's out of the way. It's easier to wear every day if it's like that, and then you're more likely to pick it up on the weekend if you're going to do whatever, and then you're more likely to experience all the things that you do in your life with that watch on without really planning to. But more often than not, it'll be on your wrist because it's just kind of your companion, like you guys say. And this is the one thing that I've been harping on about like vintage watches. We talk about vintage watches now, and they've got all these great like stories and history attached to them. And I'm like, nobody's making this history and stories today with their watches. They're all thinking about this all romantic. Well, somebody has to be thinking about, well, let's take these modern watches and build our own stories.
That's what we want. Yes. Thank you.
Exactly. Yes.
That's the disconnect that was bothering us. So we're like, we're going to make you a watch that you can wear every day, just like it was intended to.
Right. Yeah.
So I want to touch on this watch.
So
let's go sitting here. So you've got, I think I associate these kind of great like classic sport watch aesthetic that you guys have developed, and then this Zephyr. This is a release from this year.
Yes.
Is a little bit of a deviation from that. Tell me about the inspiration behind this.
It's interesting that you say deviation, because I think it's perfectly in line with our ethos, for lack of a better word.
I mean, like, just from an aesthetic, like, I would call these more kind of like sport watches, kind of with
definitely
the bezels.
Definitely not a watch here.
Yeah, and this kind of has like a formality to it.
I would say that the main inspiration behind it was we moved during the pandemic, and we now live in this old house that was built at the turn of the 20th century, like 1890 something.
Oh, wow, okay.
So it has all these little details. I don't know architecture terms. Maybe Lauren can jump in for me here. But like the railing on the stairs,
the molding, and it's got, it's...
I love that.
I don't know how to explain it, but it has the details and
pretty.
The style, and it's
nice.
Beautiful. And it's...
You got a nice place.
It's fancy.
Yeah. And
fancy, there you go.
Yeah, but so that was the spark. But we've always been wanting to do a dress watch ever since we started. And we could never come up with something that we were happy with. So we'd have all these designs, right? And I'd be like, oh, this looks amazing. And then I'd go into an archive and be like, oh, someone did that thing already in 1938. We can't do that now. So moving into this house and like having these surroundings, it kind of hit me where it's like, what if we don't do a round watch?
Well, you need to go further back.
Oh, really?
In time.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like personally. Yes. We need to go further back.
It brought us back further back into this. A little earlier.
Yeah.
I think you're allowed to do something that somebody did in 1938. I would say.
And that somebody probably did before them. And
well, the challenge with the design on that is dress watches are so minimal, right? So it only takes like a few things that someone has already done for something to be too much of a copy. I feel like so that was the main challenge for me.
Okay.
And also, I mean, at least for me, when this clicked was I was wanting to dress up a little more. I was wanting a nicer, dressier watch. Our watches that we make now, like our previous models, for men they're more versatile, for women they're not, because they're already larger on our wrists. And I was wanting something dressier because this was coming out of the hot back summer, and I had, ground to gain. I was wanting to reclaim my life and dress up and get back in the world and put some effort into my life and, carry myself with dignity after living in leggings for a year and not leaving the house. And I was wanting something fancier. And Lorenzo's like, well, what watch would you like? I was like, I'd like a Tank or maybe a Reverso. And he was looking for watches for me. And he's like, these are $6,000. He's like, wait a minute. And so that's when
we have a watch brand
designer. And spend a year laboring over it.
Yeah. So it all kind of clicked at that point. We had these influences around us, and we had this desire to be a little dressier and to put a little more effort into our appearance and to like really,
interesting.
Like get out there.
I feel like there is. I wouldn't say like a full on like all watches are going to dress watches again, but I feel like there is a bit of a conscious return to the acceptance of the dress watch, which I think went away for a bit. And I do wonder if it's that sort of instinct.
I'm really glad to hear
because
that.
I feel it myself too, to some extent. I don't know if it's because of being locked up or whatever. Or what? Locked up. Sounds a bit extra intense.
Self-imposed.
If not having no social life for a long time and everything. Yeah. But yeah, like I feel like I want to buy more leather boots. I want to buy more. We were just talking about blazers and things like that. Like that seems, and like what do you
Life
wear
is
with
short.
that? Like
let's dress up. Let's do it.
Yeah, and for listeners, you Lauren and Lorenzo are like easily the best dressed people that I ever come across when I watch things. You both always look fabulous.
I'm very casual
by the way,
today.
So.
I didn't know there was going to be a video.
Very casual. Shirt still tucked in.
Yes. They still both look beautiful, and so do the watches. So is this a line that you plan on kind of like, oh, we've hit something here, like let's keep this train of thought going, let's keep like iterating?
Is there gonna be a chronograph version with like a ceramic bells?
Have you heard anything?
We would love to. We would love to continue.
Yeah,
well, it's very thin for an automatic.
We'll see how this lands. So far we've been very happy with the reception. We had no idea what it would be because in our micro brand space there aren't a lot of dress watches and there aren't really any watches that look like that. And so we didn't know, is that because there's no demand or is that just because there's no desire to go there by the brands? And so this is a gap that we can fill. This is something we want. And for a while before we launched it, or I don't want to say launch because it's not available for sale yet, but before we revealed it, we were like, you know what? We're proud of this watch and we love it. And if people aren't on board, whatever. Yeah. I'm glad we did it. And people so far have been like, this is what we've been waiting for.
That's
really nice to hear. And yeah.
I was honestly blown away by the response. I honestly thought no one was going to like it.
Well, you have to think back to how excited you were when you first designed it. And you're like, oh, yes, let's do this.
Yeah.
And so...
Right. But I can feel one way, and other people can feel another way. And But I'm glad that people like it, and I'm glad it turned out how it turned out.
Can I give the thing that I really like about this versus... That stands out to me versus the rest of your collection, which is not to degrade the rest of the collection. I think they're very... Well, I'll just say it because I'm like back. But the three-dimensionality of the case, I think, is really pronounced here. Where that it's looking down the lugs and the way it tapers up and over into the crystal.
And chamfers back down towards the wrist.
Yeah, I mean it's just beautifully considered rather than being a more top-down design or anything. And it's
reverse on the tank.
Yeah.
I really.
That was one of one of my qualms of those watches.
You know what, Zach? That's probably the favorite thing for Lorenzo to ever hear because that was his intention with the case, and so the fact that you noticed it and brought it up. I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm just gonna be thinking about that the rest of the year.
Okay, good, great. No, I mean it's really, and it's very thin for. Is this in 9015? I think we
that's a 9029.
Okay, but it's part of the 9.
It's the 9 series.
People seem to forget how thin those are. And because people they're in all sorts of watches, but it's like I think even thinner than a 2892, perhaps, or it's around that thickness. It's like a 3 point something millimeter thick movement.
Yep.
And occasionally brands show that off, and that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I like the no seconds hand.
Oh yeah!
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's like a confident move. That's like a confidence thing.
Should I ask what the crystal's made of? No, I won't.
Oh my goodness!
It's sapphire.
It's sapphire.
It's a flat crystal.
Yeah,
because a dome would not have worked there. Also with that shape, that would have been
dome would not have worked, and in those sharp corners,
Yeah.
The edge, the acrylic needs the round
Yeah.
surface to expand.
We
So
would have considered, or we would have done acrylic, but it wouldn't have been waterproof or water resistant.
Yeah.
So we,
Well, you made the right choice
yeah,
there.
yeah. I mean, we got this comment on Instagram. Isn't it more historically accurate to use acrylic? And we're like, yes, it would have been.
Yeah.
But we also don't want you, getting caught in the rain. And
It's also 2022. You're not making an artifact. It's like you're not making a museum. Like you're making something that has nods.
We want to
to
make
the past,
something
but
that you
it's
can
not a-
use.
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, they look beautifully, and I'm glad to hear that they've been received well. And we look forward to seeing where they go from here and the rest of this year. I know you guys will be busy. We're excited to see all the watches that are coming to the website
Yeah.
in stock. So if you've been waiting around for
mhm.
Laurier Watch, keep your eyes on their Instagram page for Lorenzo's wrist and for some of the new watches.
Yes.
And you'll be at the
yes.
Wind Up New York.
We
Yes,
will.
yes,
and
and-
at Wind Up New York in the Altman building. And I already forgot
October
the dates.
21st through 23rd, unless I got that wrong.
I remember the
Yeah.
location. You remember the dates. That's
Yeah.
how it works.
Mhm.
So,
I like the teamwork.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, Blake.
yeah.
We never got a wristwatch check from you.
Oh yeah. We've
What
had
are
some
you
new
wearing?
wrist checks. I'm wearing
Good
a
call.
Porsche Design Chronograph 1. This is the GP Ice Race edition, which I'm quite fond of. We both are quite fond of this design.
Yeah. I have
we've got
I have the
a
old
few- a
ones.
few
He's got the new
around.
one. Yeah.
Mhm. Looks good on you.
Thank you. I like this watch a lot.
Titanium.
Titanium. Yeah. And it's
Super
got
light,
this.
huh?
Yeah.
It's got this quick release button.
Ooh.
The thing
Whoa,
comes out.
look
So
at
now
that.
I just need more. They just need to make more.
Using a strap to fit that half millimeter deep.
So,
Uh-huh.
anyways, so
Very
that's
cool.
what I'm wearing. Thank you
beautiful
for
watch.
asking. Lauren Lorenzo, thank you for being here, and thank you for being
Yeah, thank you
on
so
the
much.
podcast and a part of the Wind Up Watch Fair. It's always a treat getting to talk to you guys.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much for
having
having
us.
us. Yes, always a delight.
All right, well, we'll look forward to maybe a third LE sometime.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I will say, I love the first one.
Yeah.
I own the 1st one.
Mhm.
This thing is beautiful as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like. There's a real synergy.
A real synergy.
Yeah, I like it. I think
that.
that's a word.
We have
so.
another 36mm watch coming out, kind
Uh-oh.
of like this.
Okay.
But it will use color, be better suited for color.
Okay, interesting.
Wink,
Maybe
wink.
you'd like to do
Intriguing.
something
Okay.
with
Yeah.
that. I don't
Yeah.
know. We can talk.
We can
after.
think about it.
Yeah,
you
we can
know?
talk
Yeah.
after.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is how
yeah.
it starts.
Yeah.
People
Well,
wonder what's the
come
planning.
to-
It's like it's usually there's drinks involved, and that's
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, if you have any thoughts on it, leave them in the comments below. If you have any thoughts on what you would like to see in a Laurier watch,
Other than
don't
sapphire
leave, it,
crystals.
don't leave it in the comments below. Keep
Don't
it to
you
yourself.
dare.
We're gonna
Yeah.
use every material you never wanted.
Yeah.
That's the next Ellie.
All right. Well, it's been a treat talking to you guys. Thank you so much for coming. And until next time, take care.